I recently finished playing a game that was released over 7 years ago when the Switch launched, and these were my thoughts on it. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle reached sales numbers of over 10 million in the last 7 years, which is an incredible number for any game, especially when you compare it to other games in the same genre as it. Many people liked the game, but some players hated it, so today I'm going to share my thoughts on the game as well as talk about its gameplay, music, graphics, and a bunch of other things that stood out to me. First, I'll discuss the gameplay, which is heavily centered around the turn-based strategic combat, but also features puzzles and some exploration. The combat in this game is obviously the main gameplay element and what you spend most of your time on, so that is why it was very important that the developers got it right, which they did. The combat takes place on a square grid in one of the 4 kingdoms throughout the game, or in challenges that are not part of the main story. There are many different Rabbid enemy types, including normal enemies or even bosses which appear only once through the story. Some of the standard enemies found throughout the game include Ziggies, Smashers, Bucklers, Peekaboos, and Valkyries. I won't be listing any of the bosses because if you haven't played the game it would obviously spoil a major part of the main story. The in-battle movement is confined to just the grid squares where you have a limited movement range, which is very different to where you are just walking around the world, which allows you to freely walk around the linear paths and small explorable areas. The movement isn't completely free though. Sometimes you're stuck with just one fixed camera angle, while other times the game lets you move the camera around freely. In combat situations, a major feature is the ability to take cover behind nearly every object on the field that is not an enemy or one of your teammates. Another major inclusion in the game is the abilities. Abilities are unique for each character and can reward players in many different ways, such as increasing your movement range, restoring health, or increasing damage dealt to enemies. These abilities can be unlocked and improved on with the skill tree, which trades in star bits earned in battles and found in chests scattered throughout the map in challenge rooms, which are small blue rooms where you have to collect all the green coins before a timer runs out. Abilities are extremely important, especially for the later levels in the game, and something else that you need for the late game is weapon upgrades. To purchase new primary and secondary weapons for each character, you must earn coins from battles or collect them from around the map. These purchasable weapons have different abilities of their own which impact your opponents negatively and have a different chance of actually happening on each hit. As mentioned before, each character doesn't only have a primary gun, but they also have a secondary weapon that specializes in usually doing more damage than the primary weapon, but are less versatile and sometimes can only be used when you're 1 or 2 grid squares away from your opponent. These secondary weapons, along with all abilities, have charged up times which mostly last 2 or 3 rounds. There are multiple other mechanics in the combat and overall gameplay of Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, but for the sake of this video not being too long, all I'll say is that the game is very easy to learn but still rewards good gameplay, and the difficulty and especially the last world was surprisingly hard, especially for a Mario game. Another very important part of all video games is how good it actually looks. The graphics, performance, and art style in this game are all pretty good, especially when compared to other Switch games. The game runs at a steady 30 FPS, which is not ideal but doesn't really matter in the tactical turn-based genre, as most of the time you won't be moving your character around in real time. The visuals are bright, colourful, and vibrant, which I think suits both the Mario and Rabbids series really well. All the menus throughout the game also have bright designs, and overall I think the designers for the game did a very good job. Next I'm going to talk about the story in the game, which because this is a no spoilers video, I will not be going into much depth about. The plot of Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is centered around Mario, his friends, and a few good Rabbids trying to save the world from an invasion of evil Rabbids alongside Bowser Jr. Every Mario game story is going to be pretty bare bones, but I still think this is at least a bit more interesting than most other games in the franchise, and the main part of the game's narrative that stands out as being good is the silent humor used by many of the Rabbids, and the spoken humor coming from the smart robot called Beat Zero. The small comedic sections throughout the game felt fun but not annoying, as they didn't happen every single time there was dialogue. The story of Mario plus Rabbids was pretty average but not extremely boring, and the level of humor that isn't really seen in many other Mario games enables it to rise above other games in the franchise. Now let's move on to the world design and level structure. The game is split into 4 main worlds, each with its own theme, enemy types, and environmental puzzles. These areas are mostly linear with some small side paths that usually lead to collectible chests or challenging rooms. The visual themes of the worlds are really well done and help keep things feeling fresh as you move from one to the next. Between battles, you'll spend time exploring these paths. While it's nice to have a break break between fights, the pacing can sometimes slow down because of long stretches of walking or backtracking, especially if you're trying to actually find chests or hidden secrets. Some of the puzzles you encounter along the way are fun, but others can feel a bit like they're just trying to make the game long and not super difficult. Each world is also divided into multiple chapters, and the way battles are placed between exploration segments keeps a nice rhythm overall. Still, there are moments where the game feels like it's stretching things out a little too much. Even though the in-between sections are not perfect, the variety in level layouts during combat, like height differences, warp pipes, and destructible cover, adds a lot of strategy and stops the battles from feeling similar. Another thing about the game that is pretty good is its soundtrack. The music was composed by Grant Kirkhope, which also worked on games like Banjo-Kazooie. Even though I don't really like the soundtrack personally, I think it fits the game really well. Each world has its own music, and the battle themes do a good job of creating tension while still feeling fun. The sound effects also stand out, from the Rabbids shouting to the different weapon sounds, and they help make the battles feel more lively. Small touches like the victory music and the silly Rabbid voices add personality without being too much. I wouldn't ever listen to the music on its own, but during gameplay it works and fits the tone of the game. The next thing that needs to be discussed while talking about Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle are the characters, which are Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, Rabbid Mario, and Rabbid Luigi, Rabbid Peach, and Rabbid Yoshi. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses, even with unique skills that you can unlock and upgrade using the skill tree as mentioned before. My personal favourite characters to use are Rabbid Peach because of her healing skill, and Rabbid Luigi because he has the ability to steal health from enemies after damaging them. The Mario characters obviously have great designs, but the Rabbid Mario mixed characters actually have decent looking designs, and even though they're basically just rabbits wearing a couple pieces of clothing that the Mario counterparts wear, they still feel like a good mix of the two franchises, and you can see that I use them as Rabbid Luigi and Peach are my two favourite characters out of the whole roster. I feel like Ubisoft had so many characters to pull from that they could have added one unexpected Mario character, and if they wanted, made a Rabbid counterpart to fill out the options a bit more, but I still understand that there is a Donkey Kong DLC with 2 more characters anyway, and it would be much harder to just add 2 extra characters as they needed to be introduced while progressing the story, and each one has to have its own unique abilities. But I think a solution to at least the story progression problem is to include the extra characters as a reward for completing the game, and it can have a unique power and weapon that is stronger than all the other characters, as players would have a motivation to continue playing and going back through previous levels with these overpowered abilities. Anyway, I still think the character roster in this game, while not being huge, is still good, and you can definitely feel the variety of weapons and abilities while using different characters. The way I played this game is pretty different to most other people, because right after I bought it, I played a couple hours of it, made it to around halfway through the first world and didn't really enjoy it. After around a year, I came back to give it another try since I didn't want to just waste the $30 I'd spent on the game, and I enjoyed it a lot more and completed this game with a decent amount of time put into it. The reason I liked it more on my second try was that I enjoyed the difficult combat a bit more, and I also was just better at games in general, and I had gained skills from completing other games. Obviously I bought it, but my expectations before my first session with it were pretty low, and from my experiences a year ago, even those weren't really met. The second time I came back to give the game one more chance, my expectations were even lower than my first playthrough, but I was pleasantly surprised, and of course I played through the entire story. If you don't want any spoilers, skip forward 10 seconds, but my favourite world was the spooky third world, and my favourite boss fight was the fat singing rabbit. Overall, my experiences with Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle weren't good at first, but now looking back, I feel like most of my time spent on the game was really worth it and well spent. The legacy and impact of Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is pretty impressive. When it was first announced, a lot of people were confused because a crossover between Mario and the Rabbids sounded like something that should not have worked, but somehow it did. It ended up being one of the biggest surprises on the Switch in its early years, even if many people would say that this game mostly got so many sales because it was nearly a release title. The game managed to bring turn-based strategy to a wider audience by combining it with fun characters, simple mechanics, and a polished presentation. For a lot of people, including me, this was their first ever tactics game, and it made the genre feel way more approachable. It also ended up selling over 10 million copies, which is kind of insane for a weird crossover strategy game. It clearly left enough of a mark to get a full sequel, Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which tried to improve the formula with more freedom and new ideas. I haven't played the sequel yet, but the fact that this game became a franchise just shows how well it was received. Even if not many people mention it today, Kingdom Battle Battle is still a great example of how taking a weird risk can sometimes pay off in a big way. Overall, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is a pretty good game. I did not love everything about it, but I can still see why many fans of the genre loved the game when it was released in 2017. The combat is great and the strategy is surprisingly difficult, but the pacing can drag a bit and some parts of the game feel more like filler than fun to me. The characters are entertaining, especially the Rabbids with their weird sense of humor, but the story is nothing special and the puzzles felt more like a way to slow things down than something I looked forward to. I still think the story was much better than most other Mario games, but of course that is not a hard achievement. The game was an enjoyable experience, and for people who like strategy games or want something a bit different on the Switch, I would say that it is definitely worth it. Please subscribe for more videos like this and watch this video.